The Giant is probably the monster that has the most crap talked about it over the life cycle of Total War Warhammers 1 and 2. Now, in Total War Warhammer 3, we have yet another iteration of a Giant. Is it more or less useless like the other Giants were, except in niche circumstances? Perhaps it remains to be seen against a variety of factions, but certainly the Ogres Giant has more going for it than any other Giant has before. Number one thing and number two thing are healing, and the fact that unit size is now defaulted to Ultra for multiplayer, which should be the standard going forward, which means that the Giant comes in with a rocking 12,000 HP, and of course, with Lore of the Maw of Ogres, you do have access to a very strong heal in Troll Guts. It's a 8.8% heals per second for a 40-second duration. Substantial percentage of HP healing, and considering that the Giant has so much HP to begin with, especially when you consider its relatively low cost and high damage output, having a massive 600 weapon strength for only 1500 cost. The slow speed is still an issue. 39 speed is sort of in the range of infantry speed, but the other thing too about Domination mode is that the Giant can sit on a point and still expect to have targets to fight, especially against a faction which lacks any range whatsoever, such as Slaanesh. I'm actually playing the Ogres here. Turin is playing Slaanesh. I had to have him send me this replay because I had actually fought this on my old PC that died. So yeah, it's from his perspective, but I am playing the Ogres here. I've got Scrag as the opener. Scrag is very cost-effective, really strong healer with a great lore of magic, and he gives buffs to Gorgers, which we'll talk more about in another video, but just understand that Gorgers are very strong. Noblar Scrap Launcher, not quite as OP cheesy as the Iron Blaster, but still very good AoE non-armor piercing damage, which of course Slaanesh, mostly lacking armor altogether, should be good there. A couple of cheap bulls as well. In my experience, Slaanesh has trouble dealing with the cheap bulls just because, again, they have really good damage output for their cost, and Slaanesh, being very squishy, gets punished heavily by that. We've got 5 Noblars to round things out, 3 more Gorgers in reserve, 2 more Scrap Launchers, 3 more bulls with dual hand weapons for even more anti-infantry damage, 4 Tusk packs, and 2 more regular bulls. 4 turns Slaanesh. He's got Inkari, some Demonettes, a couple of Hellstriders, a couple of Marauder Spears, and some Furies. A couple more Hellstriders in reserve with 3 more Spears. Soul Grinder, Anti-Large, Soporific Musk, definitely very solid against the Ogres. Chaos Spawn also decently cost-effective here too. A couple of you had pointed out they have Devastating Flanker instead of Soporific Musk, which doesn't exactly match the tooltips here. I'm not sure exactly what the intention is. I'll try and get clarification from CA, but regardless, yeah, 160 weapon strength is still pretty solid against non-armored Ogre units. More Demonettes, more Furies, and lots of anti-infantry Marauders as well. I guess just to thin out Noblars, but anyway, let's go ahead and jump in. We are once again on the Eye in the North map, the sort of Chaos Portal style. Definitely should be quite a bit of fun. Turin and I had played this matchup several times. I think this was maybe our 3rd or 4th time playing this matchup, and each time I had brought sort of a similar variation, sort of fine-tuning my build over time with Scrag and the Giant in tandem. I think this also could be a pretty viable way to play, potentially against Khorne. The thing is about the Giant, again, that 600 weapon strength and great attack means that the Giant can contest against big, heavy, hard hitters. I don't know, I haven't tried it against Khorne yet, personally, but I potentially, you know, given that Khorne also lacks range tools, even Nurgle as well, the fact that the Giant can just kind of sustain damage. The thing I would worry about a little bit is just the higher DPS of Khorne in a sustained fight. The lack of armor also is not much of an issue at all. The other thing to consider is that you have other monsters on the Ogre Kingdom's roster. The Stonehorn is also kind of in a similar tier. Doesn't do as much damage, but is much more heavily armored. So against a faction that sort of lacks decent AP, like Nurgle, doesn't have the best AP in the world, the Stonehorn may end up being a better option because of that extra armor. It gives you extra survivability, but I figured Slaanesh, they can bring enough AP to the table that it doesn't really matter at all. So let's get in here and take a look up close at the final form Giant. And, I mean, even just given Domination mode, I do think that the other variants of Giant for Beastmen, Warriors of Chaos, Greenskins, Norska will be better in this game mode, again, due to the nature of being able to just sit them on an objective and support with other troops. Likewise, if the other Chaos factions ever get access to the god-specific lores, then that will also give them access to healing for their Giants. Could make them more viable as well. Unfortunately, the Greenskins probably will never get away to heal their Giant, but that's fine. They're really strong anyway. You can see Ankari just kind of rushing about here. I'm going full court press with Ogres on all sides. We've got Gorgers pursuing those Demonettes there. In the center, the Giant is going to go wherever Ankari goes. The Giant is literally a third of the speed of Ankari. So Turin, with good micro, can stay away and not take that engagement, but what it means is that I can essentially create like a no-go zone for Ankari on one of the points, especially with Scrag and the Giant in tandem. I've brought here Bullgorger as well, which is a great cheap attack and armor piercing buff. Obviously synergizes great with the Giant, gives him even more damage, and almost guarantees a hit even against a good duelist like Ankari. So pretty good stuff there. The Gorgers over here, though, had been trading very well into those Demonettes. Willing Prey now gets popped on them, though, down to 0 defense to only 28 attack. Nice debuff from Ankari. I'm going to just pull them away. Thankfully, Gorgers being unbreakable, you can kind of, dictate their engagements to a degree. But more Bulls also moving over here. We've got some regular Marauders. We've got the Noblars in to kind of saturate. The Marauders of Slaanesh are relatively squishy. I mean, 32 defense for a spear unit honestly isn't that good. So they could potentially get pounded by the Bulls, but it does look like they're perhaps going to countercharge here. Anyway, we'll keep an eye on the center engagement. I'm just kind of running Scrag back to objective number 3. Scrag and the Giant, sort of buddy cop movie, trying to get Evil Ankari away from the objective here. More Gorgers coming in as well. The specific buff, the item for Scrag that makes Gorgers so much better here. You can see they've got an additional weapon strength and heals per second from that Cauldron of the Great Maw. Very strong instant energy with Gorgers. Gorgers themselves with stock, unbreakable, Vanguard deployment, monstrous infantry, of course, count as full infantry capture power, as you have probably heard me say by now 100 times. So unbreakable, monstrous infantry, as it follows, is pretty good in general. Gorgers also have a lot else going for them, but we're going to use them and try and support the Scrag Giant blob with Gorgers. You can see I've brought some more over in here. Fury's coming in just to try and interrupt Turin, bringing in some more Demonettes, and Spawn of Slaanesh contests the center objective. The Spawn, you know, maybe in a surround of the Giant, they could wear him down with that weapon strength, but Giant's got so much HP that it's going to be a tough way to go about things, no doubt. Noblar's over here just holding back a whole bunch of Hellstriders and actually trading reasonably cost-effectively, all things considered. Bulls also rushing downhill with some Saber Tusks to charge into the Demonettes here. Got more units being summoned all over the field here. We've got Scrap Launchers coming in, more Gorgers coming in as well. Objective number 2 and 3 are under my control, so I'm gaining victory tickets at a pretty good rate. Turin misremembered to capture his own home objective, which is potentially going to come back to haunt him, but this was actually pretty early on in the early access. We hadn't really figured out how strong the catch-up mechanic could be for some factions. Right now, Turin is already starting to get some losing compensation, extra supply here. I thought you had to be 1,000 behind, but it looks like it actually kicks in maybe slightly sooner than that. But yeah, you can see that losing compensation. So that does mean that he's going to start to get quite a few more troops into the mid-game, but the issue here is that Ankari's decided to come in and take an objective on, take an engagement on the objective here. Now, given that I have Scrag and all these Gorgers in the vicinity, Ankari's got all these Hellstriders, I can see how Turin was pretty confident to actually take this engagement. These Spawn of Slaanesh also got hung up on something and dropped their attack order there, now getting a proper rear charge with that devastating flanker attribute. But we're going to go ahead and get some buffs going here. It looks like, yeah, actually just acquiescence on the Giant. I'm not sure exactly how much healing we've done into the Giant at this point. I haven't really been paying attention to the spells, but at this point, Ankari's going to get surrounded by Gorgers, and the Giant gets the Bull Gorger there to give him extra melee attack, up to 89 melee attack, 623 weapon strength. And Kari definitely going to take a punishing amount of damage. Come on, there we go. Oh, big old chunk of damage right there. That's so cost-effective, too, considering the Giant is literally half the cost, and they actually have some match animations, too, which I did not expect. And Kari kind of belly slapping the Giant, just checking him here, like, I'm way faster than you. Don't even try it. Slaps him 3 times, and yet still is getting hit by Gorgers and Scrag this whole time, too, so... Yep, nice trying, Kari. And here come the scrap launchers. Yeah, double scrap launcher deployed at this point. One of them has already been raining hell, and on a squishy low armor unit like Demonettes, or pretty basically anything of Slaanesh, right? Pretty much all their units. That is going to deal very effective damage. So more Hellstriders coming in though. They get a great charge and a really nice engagement on those bulls. Going to do a ton of damage initially. Demonettes here as well, wearing down some of my bulls. Turn mid did manage to cap his home objective, but he is getting a significant amount of losing compensation. You can see an extra 4 supply per second with a total of 21 there with that extra damage. So how much does that end up mattering, though, when I'm pretty far ahead on army damage value anyway? A lot of people have complained that the catch-up mechanic is too strong, and I think I agree. I think it either needs to be nerfed or removed entirely. I'm not sure exactly which yet would be the better option of the two. But there are plenty of situations where you just get far enough behind on army damage that you could get a lot of extra supply compensation, and the slowdown bug is just absolutely trolling me here right now. Anyway, yeah, that extra supply compensation, it will not end up mattering at all. And in this type of situation here, you can see all these Gorgers are still alive. I mean, a few of them had even been heal capped by the healing of Scrag here. And we don't even have the heal cap of the Giant visible yet, so I could potentially dump, thousands and thousands of more HP into that Giant. And it will continue to tank out, and Slaanesh, even though they do pretty good DPS, to get through something that meaty, really you would need like maybe a Soul Grinder or 2, to be honest, which is not a cost-effective engagement at all. So, I don't know. For me, this seems like the worst matchup for Slaanesh on paper. Just the fact that the Ogres deal so much damage, and they have high charge, and just, I don't know, they trade very well. They tend to have high HP and high damage. Low armor, can have low stats as well. But pretty powerful ranged, too. Slaanesh can definitely shut down your range, but man, look at some of these Gorgers' attack animations. The damage, too, is pretty legit. I mean, Gorgers do have less unit models than your typical monstrous infantry unit, but still, with the extra weapon strength of Scrag, they just get even scarier. Hellstriders charging in. The Faceless Giant swinging his giant club. And nice shots of the scrap launcher there, just landing on these Demonettes. Pretty brutal stuff. You can see they're just kind of launching piles of garbage, to be honest, which is pretty hilarious. But yeah, those Demonettes also getting flung all over the place by Gorgers. Giant naked bone trolls against Demonettes. Something... I do think that despite the fact Slaanesh's forces are getting wrecked here, somewhere inside, no doubt that the Dark Prince feels this is somehow appropriate. Anyway... Scrag got his claws out, just chasing away the Hellstriders. Plenty of meat for the pot on this one. And there's not much meat left for Slaanesh on the field, though, at this point. We do have some Hellstriders over here being chased off, some more Marauders with spears coming in. The scrap launcher here has just about used up all of its ammunition. It's generated its value back. And this one here as well, getting some pretty good value. Not quite paid for itself yet. Of course, I can use them as chariots in melee as well, at least a little bit. But, yeah, I might fast forward, honestly, through more of the late game on this one, because, as you can see here, just by army value damage, I mean, despite the fact that he's getting an extra 8 losing compensation, which I didn't even think, I thought the cap was 6, but I guess we all learned something new here today. You can actually go up to 9. Wow, 9 losing compensation. I don't know if there is actually a cap, but I mean, it really doesn't matter. You can see Turn's supply situation, and you have been able to the whole time. If you've been paying attention, you can see that he's more or less supply blocked, bringing in all of the units that he can. And, oh yeah, the Giant is now back up to full health. After having done its value in damage, just straight up, it's now back to full health. So, this is the thing about the Ogre Kingdom's Giant right here. This is no doubt the Apex Giant. I know it's not pretty, but this is what peak Giant form looks like. That's right, buddy. And you even got some matched animations, which I definitely did not expect. A lot of people don't know this either, but the giants actually do have matched combat animations for fighting other giants, which are pretty rare, because that's not an engagement you would see naturally very often, but it's there. Now, here's the question. Will you recruit giants in campaign for ogres? No, probably not. Probably you still just get stone horns, because, again, the armor. Although, certainly in multiplayer, the extra weapon strength, again, vampire counts to come. Even factions with relatively limited range, like Warriors of Chaos. Other factions who may not choose to tech heavily into range, like maybe Beastmen, Tomb Kings, it's hard to say, but regardless, the Giant definitely seems like it has a pretty solid spot on the Ogre Kingdom's roster, and in a few matchups now coming in Total War Warhammer 3, Scrag also super cost effective, pays back pretty much his value. Doesn't cost a whole lot with the right spell loadout there, and scrap launchers also did fairly solid. Ogre Bulls, pretty cost effective too, both just about pay for themselves. Gorgers, same thing, they cost 1100, so like everything in my starting army pretty much comes in on the money, except for the Noblars, who actually overperform in a few cases. So there you go. And reinforcements, likewise, again, really nice performance from the Gorgers. You guys will be seeing plenty of these guys in Domination, and they're pretty good in land battles too, which, yes, I have actually played a few land battles now. More on that in a bit. We've got some scrap launcher value here as well. The Bulls dual weapons, didn't really use too much of them. They're less cost effective than the regular 500 Bulls, but still. Saber Tusk pack also kind of coming in at the same cost as the regular Bulls. Offer extra mobility, less staying power, and ultimately less hitting power too, but obviously that 90 speed is quite nice. Does feel like they should probably have Vanguard deployment in multiplayer too. I know that they have to get it from a hunter skill in campaign, like the hunter hero gets a skill that gives Vanguard to all of the Saber Tusks in that Lord's army, or in that hero's army. In multiplayer, though, they should probably just have it baseline. That's just my own opinion. Take of it what you will. For Turin here, and Kari only returning 1500 value is really pretty bad. I mean, still 14,000 damage dealt, but the fact that we're able to just sustain through that, and a lot of that damage was against relatively cheap stuff, it just goes to show kind of the issues that Slaanesh has. Even still, his units paid back quite a bit of value. I think these Hellstriders might have been summoned multiple times, but still, 2,000 damage value, not bad at all there. 1,000 for the Demonettes. If Demonettes don't take too much damage, they can definitely hit back pretty hard. But in the case of Slaanesh versus Ogres, they can definitely take too much damage. The Spawn actually just about paid for themselves too. I think the Spawn could be a pretty decent pick in this matchup. You guys know also I'm a big fan of Fiends, or you should from my video about them. Fiends are also pretty good in this matchup. In general, I think you want to have Soporific Musk at all times against Ogre Kingdoms, because it helps you trade that much better in melee. That extra 5% chance to not get hit by their big weapon damage does matter, definitely in the long run. Also, Demonettes, reasonably cost effective. Yeah, the excuse me, the Furies, I'm not sure exactly what they got onto that they got so much value, but the rest was not great, considering they were so far behind the curve. Obviously, losing Inkari early on like that, just, I mean, that alone is like a 1,500 value disadvantage. It's hard to come back from, definitely. But yeah, Giants for the Ogre Kingdoms. You guys heard it here, folks. Giants are officially the meta against Slaanesh, and in general, I think this is maybe Slaanesh's worst matchup. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this. If you do like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.